The following podcast is part of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Wholeness means to me being in a state of joy.
Wholeness means feeling complete, owning my authentic gifts.
Wholeness is really connected. Everything is connected to everything.
Wholeness is where we have access to all parts of ourselves.
Oh, interesting. Okay. This is from the Work Your Light deck.
Ooh.
And the one I pulled for today was Trust the Niggle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear what that has to say.
I know, I'm excited. I've never seen it. Oh, Trust the Niggle. What is the niggling feeling trying to tell you? That niggling feeling, that annoying niggling feeling, that inconvenient, annoying niggling feeling. Try as you might, it's there and it ain't going anywhere. Most people spend years ignoring their niggling feelings, throwing their best dollops of stubbornness, ego, and post-rationalization to numb them out. It's exhausting. And until you face the niggle, life just throws more bait to awaken it. To draw your attention to the light within you that is bursting to come out. The niggle is an arrow pointing to what is standing in your way. The relationship, the conversation, the decision, the shift that needs to be made, the stone in your shoe. Often we feel the niggling feeling in our body first. Many people think that intuition is something from higher realms, but in fact, it is the body that is the intuitive one, working through our senses to deliver vibrational information. It takes just a moment every day to scan your body to receive the intuitive intelligence and act on it quickly. You are being called to face the niggle now. If you don't face it, the universe will throw something much bigger and more obvious in your path, and then you will likely regret that you didn't answer the niggle in the first place. I know it's scary, but you are safe. Answer the niggle now.
That is so good about what we're going to talk about today. So we there's two parts to this this episode, and so at the end of the episode, I'm going to throw on there a recording of the story, "The Fir Tree" by Hans Christian Andersen, and it's a classic. It was, I think it was released in 1845. So wow. It's been around so long, so it's past the copyright date, and so we're able to say it. But when we were thinking of like doing kind of a we call this a cozy story time, it kind of changed a little bit as I read the story and recorded the story, and I wanted to have this story because the little fir tree was something that it was a moment for me. So we're talking probably 2015. It could have even been in 2014. So I was just probably 2014. I was going, it was right at I thought the worst time of my life. And yet I was right at the cusp of the worst time of my life. But my sister-in-law, I was talking to her and things were just in flux. And she was kind of learning some of the things that we teach on this network. And she said, I really want you to try doing some meditation, and I want you to in a meditation, I want you to meet with your higher power or whoever shows up, and I want you to ask for a gift. I remember within the next couple days going into my closet and turning the light off. All the kids were at school, and it felt like I was kind of leaping off a cliff. I was
You had never really meditated before.
Yeah, I had never really meditated. And I had been wanting things to just go away and be back to the way they were. And so for me to do this meditation, it was a part of me that was saying, okay, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to do something different. And I sat there for a minute in this dark, and this was the best lesson for me in meditation, because, when I sat there, of course, all the lists, the tasks just kind of kept going through my mind, and I just kind of sat there and let that happen. And pretty soon it all kind of funneled down, and this like vision opened up, and there was two parts to the vision. And one, immediately I was at the edge of this long, skinny, like bridge. So if you've seen, do you remember, Indiana Jones, the third one?
Last Crusade.
Yes.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. Okay.
Yeah. So remember, he has to step out and he throws the sand on, he can't see. So he throws the sand on there and he sees this long, narrow bridge. It's like that crosses over this ravine, right? Just this narrow ravine. And I could sense that it was like, I was going to cross this ravine, but I was happy. I would just fall off, and like, it's fine. I'll just fall off.
Okay. Oh yeah. That
was the feeling. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And there was a part of me that really wanted to just, yeah, great. If that's this end, I'll just fall off the ravine. I'll die. And then sweet, all my problems are solved. Mm-hmm. But there was this urging to cross, to go and cross and to not fall. And so I stepped out, in that meditation, I stepped out and walked. And it probably took several years of going back to that and seeing where I was, and finally crossing that ravine, and then getting to, and then it was a vast desert, and then realizing I was at I had reached kind of an oasis, and I'd had an oasis moment. And so it was really profound. But at the end of that, I moved out onto the ledge, and felt just so resistant to this way of being. I just wanted things to go back to the way I wanted all my problems to go away. I had gooded them, I had done all what was asked of me, this was supposed to happen. I felt like very much like I deserved to have what I wanted, because I had done everything I was supposed to, that feeling. And once I had kind of stepped down onto that ledge, I remembered, to ask for a gift. And in this darkness, I saw a little fir tree. And I recognized that I felt like the fir tree. I felt so prickly. I felt so undesirable, so plain, so like everybody would just like, and that was very distinct, that it was a fir tree, not just a Christmas tree, or not like a green evergreen, like it was a fir tree. And immediately I felt these divine hands just encompass that fir tree, not caring that they're going to get sap or poked by the needles, just loving. And I cried and cried because that was so meaningful for me, that I felt like maybe I was worthwhile, and going back to like, okay, we have a plan for you. I mean, this was in hindsight, I have to say I was ready to just fall off the cliff. I was ready to just be, like let go, not necessarily, hurt myself, but just check out, what I mean? Just, or just, just not evolve. And it was so foreign for me to move and do something differently than what everyone else was doing, or to try differently, or to look differently, at that point, I didn't even know what it was. I just knew it was differently. And I felt like so prickly, like I'm going to upset people, I'm going to bother people. I am not going to be someone's favorite, plant. And to have those arms wrap around me and embrace that is just something that I've leaned on, since then. So we're going on probably 10 years now, of really, really leaning on that experience. And so when I read The Little Fir Tree, it's interesting because In doing some of the research, so fairy tales used to be a different kind. They used to be a different breed. Our Disney versions are very different than the fairy tales. And from what I've gathered, a lot of times, they were trying to tell a story of very black and white, good and evil.
Teach like a moral,
right? Like a lesson that is very black and white, and they were really kind of intense. In fact, the original Cinderella story had both stepsisters cut off their toes and heels so they could fit in the gold, not glass slipper. The stepsisters were also with ugly hearts instead of ugly like Disney, they just had ugly hearts. And they have their eyes, and in the original story, their eyes are gouged out by doves during Cinderella's wedding. And the last lines of Cinderella are not, and they lived happily ever after, but really, and thus for their wickedness and falsehood, they were punished with blindness all their days.
So the story isn't about Cinderella. It's about the stepsisters.
Yeah, it kind of, it's like, yeah, here's what not to do. And they want to make it very extreme and very, very black and white. And that was just kind of, that's the 1800s for you. And so when you listen to this little fir tree, it is not a fairy tale as we know it. It is not a fairy tale as we know it, but it's very much about appreciating the beauty of where you are and really being in touch with the natural world and to cherish what's happening in our lives rather than, hoping something else comes along to change it. And very much as much of the non-fun as this story is, it really reflects for me the journey that I learning to be curious about where I was, being with it in the story. It's so sweet because like the nature, different kinds of nature will speak to this little fir tree and say, hey, why don't you look at this, and trying to get this fir tree to be in the present moment. And he just cannot. And it's not a happily ever after ending because, he is not, he doesn't learn until the very end, which it's too late almost to really be happy for where he was at. And again, like for me, I mean, I was in suffering, so I don't think I would have been happy where I was at, but I think I could have, before that point, not already have decided what the trail was going to look like ahead, and to kind of be like, let's see what happens. I mean, I was very much like, okay, I want A, so I'm going to do all this stuff to earn it, rather than, seeing like, what do I like, and what is it about me that wants that? And, rather than going inside, it was very much an equation that worked for a long time. A plus B equals C. It was just as easy as that. And pretty soon that did not happen. And I think if I would have learned, beforehand how to be in the moment rather than what was coming next or what it looked like from other people or what it was going to be judged as, and really just been myself. That's been the journey that I've been on, and that's the journey of this story. And so I hope you enjoy the reading of it, and just see all the feelings. And because during the holidays, we've talked about this before, we want them to be joyful. I remember my mom, she would have grand ideas of these programs she was going to put on and have the grandkids put on their programs, and she'd be so sad when people weren't doing it exactly right. And sometimes that's the way it is. Life doesn't go like we want it to go. And I think it can get really uncomfortable very fast if we have expectations about things rather than letting the world or the situation unfold, almost like a gift, right? So you think of the present moment as a present, and we don't know what it is. We don't know what's underneath the wrapping. And so allowing that the gift is in the unknowing. It really, really is. And it takes a certain sense of emotional maturity to get there. And so, I mean, a young person, I don't blame you if you can't get, or if you don't want to, I get it, I get it. But on the other side, when you reach when you cross the bridge, when you get to the oasis, when you finally find that promised green land, and it looks totally different than where you started, there's gifts there. But it doesn't wash away the grief. It doesn't wash away the longing sometimes. Like, that's the complexity, is that it's not always the happily ever after. It's just not. That's a fairy tale. And even the fairy tales didn't have that.
Right. Yeah. And I think the happily ever after is coming back and just finding the sense of who you are. That, to me, that's the happily ever after. And so you can even do that in the holidays. I love that idea of having it be a present and just coming back to who you are and just finding joy in that. Oh, it sounds so cliche, but joy in that moment when the kid doesn't like their present, and just being like, isn't that so interesting? Or,
Right.
I didn't, that pageant that I wanted to do didn't do the way I wanted it to do, but there's such beauty in that because it went the way it went.
Right. And yeah, to just notice the unexpected, be okay with what is different, and notice the discomfort you have with that. Like, that's a gift, it's like, wow, that really hit me here, like that really bothers me, or that really excites me, and it's not about silver lining it at all. Like, I think a silver lining, it's about really, really being in that present moment with what is. Because in the story, he has this grand moment that he looks for, and then he realizes later that even those small moments he would have back, even those ones that he thought were a menace, he would have back, because he was just always outside of that present moment.
Yeah. Oh, that rings true. I'm excited to hear it.
We know you have a lot on your holiday to-do list. And at the UPS Store, we're here to help. With our pack and ship guarantee, your gifts will arrive intact or you'll be reimbursed. Got holiday cards to print? We're also the premier printing store. We've got everything you need for every way you holiday. Visit theupsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Most locations are independently owned. Product, services, prices, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable. Come into your local store today.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the new generative AI assistant from AWS. Many tasks can make business slow, like wading through mud. Help! Luckily, there's a faster, easier, less messy choice. Amazon Q can securely understand your business data to help you streamline tasks, like summarizing quarterly results or doing complex analyses in no time. Q got this. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
The Fir Tree by Hans Christian Andersen, 1845. Far down in the forest, where the warm sun and the fresh air made a sweet resting place, grew a pretty little fir tree, and yet it was not happy. It wished so much to be tall like its companions, the pines and the firs which grew around it. The sun shone, and the soft air fluttered its leaves, and the little peasant children passed by, prattling merrily, but the fir tree heeded them not. Sometimes the children would bring a large basket of raspberries or strawberries, wreathed on a straw, and seat themselves under the fir tree and say, "Is it not a pretty little tree?" which made it feel more unhappy than before. And yet all this while the tree grew a notch or a joint taller every year, for by the number of joints in the stem of a fir tree we can discover its age. Still as it grew, it complained, "Oh, how I wish I were as tall as the other trees. Then I would spread out my branches on every side, and my top would overlook the wide world. I should have the birds building their nests on my boughs, and when the wind blew, I should bow with stately dignity like my tall companions." The tree was so discontented that it took no pleasure in the warm sunshine. The birds, or the rosy clouds that floated over the morning and evening. Sometimes in winter, when the snow lay white and glittering on the ground, a hare would come springing along and jump right over the little tree, and then how mortified it would feel. 2 winters passed. When the 3rd arrived, the tree had grown so tall that the hare was obliged to run around it. Yet it remained unsatisfied and would exclaim, "Oh, if I could but keep on growing tall and old. There is nothing else worth caring for in the world." In the autumn, as usual, the woodcutters came and cut down several of the tallest trees, and the fine young fir tree, which was now grown to its full height, shuddered as the noble trees fell to the earth with a crash. After the branches were looped off, the trunks looked so slender and bare that they could scarcely be recognized. Then they were placed upon wagons and drawn by horses out of the forest. Where are they going? What would become of them? The young fir tree wished very much to know, so in the spring when the swallows and the storks came, he asked, "Do you know where those trees were taken? Did you meet them?" The swallows knew nothing, but the stork, after a little reflection, nodded his head and said, "Yes, I think I do. I met several new ships when I flew from Egypt, and they had fine masts that smelt like fir. I think these must have been the trees. I assure you they were stately, very stately." "Oh, how I wish I were as tall enough to go to the sea," said the fir tree. "What is the sea, and what does it look like?" "It would take too much time to explain," said the stork, flying quickly away. "Rejoice in thy youth," said the sunbeam. "Rejoice in the fresh growth and the young life that is in thee." And the wind kissed the tree, and the dew watered it with tears, but the fir tree regarded them not. Christmas time drew near, and many young trees were cut down, some even smaller and younger than the fir tree, who enjoyed neither rest nor peace with longing to leave its forest home. These young trees, which were chosen for their beauty, kept their branches, and were also laid on wagons and drawn by horses out of the forest. "Where are they going?" asked the fir tree. "They are not taller than I am. Indeed, one is much less, and why are the branches not cut off? Where are they going?" We know," sang the sparrows. "We have looked in at the windows of the houses in the town, and we know what is done with them. They are dressed up in the most splendid manner. We have seen them standing in the middle of a warm room and adorned with all sorts of beautiful things, honey cakes, gilded apples, playthings, and many hundreds of wax tapers." "And then," asked the fir tree, trembling through all its branches, "and then what happens?" "We did not see any more," said the sparrows, "but this was enough for us." "I wonder whether anything so brilliant will ever happen to me," thought the fir tree. "It would be much better than crossing the sea. I long for it almost with pain. Oh, when will Christmas be here? I am now as tall and well grown as those which were taken away last year. Oh, that I were now laid in a wagon and standing in the warm room with all that brightness and splendor around me. Something better and more beautiful is to come after, or the trees would not be so decked out. Yes, what follows must be grander and even more splendid. What can it be? I am weary with longing. I scarcely know how I feel." "Rejoice with us," said the air and the sunlight, "enjoying thine own bright life in the fresh air." But the tree would not rejoice, though it grew taller every day, and winter and summer, its dark green foliage might be seen in the forest, while passers-by would say, "What a beautiful tree." A short time before Christmas, the discontented fir tree was the first to fall. As the axe cut through the stem and divided the pith, the tree fell with a groan to the earth, conscious of pain and faintness, and forgetting all its anticipation of happiness in sorrow at leaving its home in the forest. It knew that it should never again see its dear old companions, the trees, nor the little bushes and many-colored flowers that had grown by its side. Perhaps not even the birds. Neither was the journey at all pleasant. The fir tree recovered itself while being unpacked in the courtyard of a house with several other trees, and it heard a man say, "We only want one, and this is the prettiest." Then came 2 servants in grand livery and carried the fir tree to a large and beautiful apartment. On the walls hung pictures, and near the great stove stood great china vases with lions on lids. There were rocking chairs, silken sofas, large tables covered with pictures, books, and playthings, worth a great deal of money, at least the children said so. Then the fir tree was placed in a large tub full of sand, but green baize hung all around it, so that no one could see it was a tub. and it stood on a very handsome carpet. How the fir tree trembled! What was going to happen to him now? Some young ladies came, and the servants helped them adorn the tree. On one branch they hung little bags cut out of colored paper. Each bag was filled with sweetmeats. From other branches hung gilded apples and walnuts as if they had grown there. And above and all around were hundreds of red, blue, and white tapers, which were fastened to the branches. Dolls, exactly like real babies, were placed under the green leaves. The tree had never seen such things before, and at the very top was fastened a glittering star made of tinsel. Oh, it was very beautiful. "This evening," they all exclaimed, "how bright it will be." "Oh, that the evening were come," thought the tree, "and the tapers lighted. Then I shall know what else is going to happen. Will the trees of the forest come to see me? I wonder if the sparrows will peep in at the windows as they fly. Shall I grow faster here and keep on all these ornaments summer and winter?" But guessing was of very little use. It made his bark ache, and this pain was as bad for a slender fir tree as headache is for us. At last the tapers were lighted, and then what a glistening blaze of light the tree presented. It trembled so with joy in all its branches that one of the candles fell among the green leaves and burnt some of them. "Help! Help!" exclaimed the young ladies. But there was no danger, for they quickly extinguished the fire. After this, the tree tried not to tremble at all, though the fire frightened him. He was so anxious not to hurt any of the beautiful ornaments, even though their brilliancy dazzled him. And now the folding doors were thrown open, and a troop of children rushed in as if they were intended to upset the tree. They were followed more silently by their elders. For a moment the little ones stood silent with astonishment, and then they shouted for joy till the room rang, and they danced merrily around the tree while one present after another was taken from it. "What are they doing? What will happen next?" thought the fir. At last the candles burnt to the branches and were put out. Then the children received permission to plunder the tree. Oh, how they rushed upon it till the branches cracked, and had it not been fastened with the glistening star to the ceiling, it must have been thrown down. The children were danced about with their pretty toys, and no one noticed the tree, except the children's maid, who came and peeped among the branches to see if an apple or a fig had been forgotten. A story, cried the children, pulling the little fat man toward the tree. "Now we shall be in the green shade," said the man as he seated himself under it, "and the tree will have the pleasure of hearing also. But I shall only relate one story. What shall it be? Ivide Avadi? Or Humpty Dumpty, who fell down the stairs but soon got up again, and at last married a princess?" "Avide Avade," cried some. "Humpty Dumpty," cried others, and there was a fine shouting and crying out. But the fir tree remained quite still and thought to himself, "Shall I have anything to do with all of this?" But he had already amused them as much as they wished. The old man told them a story of Humpty Dumpty, how he fell down the stairs and was raised up again and married a princess. And the children clapped their hands and cried, tell another," for they wanted to hear the story of Avide Avade, but they only had Humpty Dumpty. After this, the fir tree became quite silent and thoughtful. Never had the birds in the forest told such tales as Humpty Dumpty, who fell down the stairs and yet married a princess. "Ah, yes, so it happens in the world," thought the fir tree. He believed it all, because it was related by such a nice man. "Ah, well," he thought, "who knows? Perhaps I may fall down too and marry a princess." And he looked forward joyfully to the next evening, expecting to be again decked out in the lights and playful things, gold and fruit. "Tomorrow I will not tremble," thought he. "I will enjoy all my splendor, and I shall hear the story of Humpty Dumpty again, and perhaps Ivide Avade." And the tree remained quiet and thoughtful all night. In the morning the servants and the housemaids came in. "Now," thought the fir, "all my splendor is going to begin again." But they dragged him out of the room and up the stairs to the garret and threw him on the floor in a dark corner where no daylight shone, and there they left him. "What does this mean?" thought the tree. "What am I to do here? I can hear nothing in a place like this." And he had time enough to think, for days and nights passed and no one came near him, and when at last somebody did come, it was only to put a large box in a corner. So the tree was completely hidden from sight, as if it had never existed. "It is winter now," thought the tree. "The ground is hard and covered with snow, so that people cannot plant me. I shall be sheltered here, I dare say, until spring comes. How thoughtful and kind everyone is to me. Still, I wish this place were not so dark, as well as lonely, with not even a little hare to look at." How pleasant it is to be out in the forest while the snow lay on the ground, when the hare would run by, yes, and jump over me too. Although I did not like it then, oh, it's terribly lonely here. Squeak, squeak, said a little mouse, creeping cautiously toward the tree. Then came another, and they both sniffed at the fir tree and kept between the branches. Oh, it's very cold, said the little mouse, or else we should be so comfortable here, shouldn't we, you old fir tree? I am not old, said the fir tree. There are many who are older than I am. Where do you come from, and what do you know? Asked the mice, who were full of curiosity. Have you seen the most beautiful places in the world, and can you tell us all about them? And have you been in the storeroom where the cheeses lie on the shelf and the ham hangs from the ceiling? One can run about on tallow candles there and go in thin and come out fat. I know nothing of that place, said the fir tree, but I know the wood where the sun shines and the birds sing. And then the tree told the little mice all about its youth. They had never heard such an account in their lives, and after they had listened to it attentively, they said, What number of things have you seen? You must have been very happy. Happy, exclaimed the fir tree, and then as he reflected upon what he'd been telling them, he said, Ah, yes, after all, those were happy days. But when he went on and related all about Christmas Eve and how he had been dressed up with cakes and lights, the mice said, How happy you must have been, you old fir tree. I am not at all old, replied the tree. I only came from the forest this winter. I am now checked in my growth. What splendid stories you can relate, said the little mice, and the next night 4 other mice came with them to hear what the tree had to tell. The more he talked, the more he remembered, and then he thought to himself, Those were happy days, but they may come again. Humpty Dumpty fell downstairs, and yet he married the princess. Perhaps I may marry a princess too. And the fir tree thought of the pretty little birch tree that grew in the forest, which was to him a real beautiful princess. Who is Humpty Dumpty? Asked the little mice. And then the little tree related the whole story. He could remember every single word, and the little mice were so delighted that they were ready to jump on top of the tree. The next night, a great many more mice made their appearance, and on Sunday 2 rats came with them. But they said it was not a pretty story at all, and the little mice were very sorry, for it made them also think of it less. Do you only know one story? Asked the rats. Only one, replied the fir tree. I heard it on the happiest evening of my life, but I did not know I was so happy at the time. We think it is a very miserable story, said the rats. Don't you know any story about bacon or tallow in the storeroom? No, replied the tree. Many thanks to you then, replied the rats, and they marched off. The little mice also kept away after this, and the tree sighed and said, It was very pleasant when the merry little mice sat around me and listened while I talked. Now that has also passed too. However, I shall consider myself happy when someone comes to take me out of this place. But would that ever happen? Yes, one morning people came to clear out the garret, and the boxes were packed away, and the tree was pulled out of the corner and thrown roughly on the garret floor. Then the servants dragged it out upon the staircase where the daylight shone. Now life is beginning again, said the tree, rejoicing in the sunshine and fresh air. Then it was carried downstairs and taken into the courtyard so quickly that it forgot to think of itself and could only look about. There was so much to be seen. The court was close to the garden, where everything looked blooming. Fresh and fragrant roses hung over the little palings. The linden trees were in blossom, while the swallows flew here and there, crying, Twit, 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 my mate is coming. But it was not the fir tree they meant. Now I shall live, cried the tree, joyfully spreading out his branches. But at last they were all withered and yellow, and it lay in the corner amongst weeds and nettles. The star of gold paper still stuck to the top of the tree and glittered in the sunshine. In the same courtyard, 2 of the merry children were playing, who had danced around the tree at Christmas and had been so happy. The youngest saw the gilded star and ran to pull it off the tree. Look what is sticking to the ugly old fir tree, said the child, treading on the branches till they cracked under his boots. And the tree saw all the fresh, bright flowers in the garden, and then looked at itself and wished it had remained in the dark corner of the garret. It thought of the fresh youth of the forest, and of the merry Christmas evening, and of the little mice who had listened to the story of Humpty Dumpty. Past, past, said the old tree. Oh, had I but enjoyed myself while I could have done so, but now it is too late. Then a lad came and chopped the tree into small pieces, till a large bundle lay in the heap on the ground. The pieces were placed on the fire under the copper, and they quickly blazed up brightly, while the tree sighed so deeply that each sigh was like a pistol shot. Then the children who were at play came and seated themselves in front of the fire and looked at it and cried, Pop, pop. But each pop
With such a deep sigh, the tree was thinking of a summer day in the forest and of the Christmas evening and of Humpty Dumpty, the only story it had ever heard and knew how to relate, till at last it was consumed. The boys still played in the garden, and the youngest wore the golden star on his breast with which the tree had been adorned during the happiest evening of its existence. Now all was past. The tree's life was past, and the story also, for all stories must come to an end at last.
When most people are asked what they want, they will answer, I want to be happy. But happy takes practice, and that's what the Wholeness Library is all about. So check it out free at thewholenessnetwork.com.